Now, Professor Tom Brett, all the way from Charlestown to
via Freemantle,
and Perth, and back to Westport now for the time being.
Okay.
So, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Where did you come from? Well, you came from Charlestown, obviously, yeah?
Yeah, I was born in Charlestown. I lived about a mile outside Charlestown it's on the airport road, the now airport road. It used to be the Ballyhonus road, the Galway road. And I have been there my parents were there, and my family, and my brother and sister were there. So.
And were there many in your family?
There were 10 of us.
10?
Yes.
Oh, you had a good gang, good crowd at the dinner table.
Yeah, I came number 2. My mother always said that I was such a joy that she couldn't stop after that. You can't believe that if you like.
Well, it sounds good. The other thing is, and where'd you go to school then?
We went to a local
national school.
Country primary school, and I always say my mother was very smart, and she was quite intelligent, but she didn't want us to go to the local town school because that was a bit rougher, and we had 2 lovely lady teachers there, and they really were treasures, and all I can say is safely that there was never any abuse whatsoever in that school, and we all respected them very well, and lo behold us, if we didn't show that respect to our teachers, my mother would not tolerate that. So we were lucky, and it was one thing I've always appreciated over the years. That listening to others and their experiences, it is something I really appreciated.
And what were their names?
Well, Mary Swords and Catherine Casey. And Mary Swords, her husband was Michael Swords, who was the principal in the town school.
Okay.
And their son Aidan Swords actually played football with Mayo, and also won an All-Ireland medal with Galway as when he was playing with he was a dentist. He was doing with early dental studies with UCG, and he was with Father Griffins, I think, in Galway, and played with Galway. And he was on the panel, I think, in '64, the first time they won it.
And then when you were going to national school, what subjects were you learning at that time?
Well, there were basically maths or arithmetic, English, Irish, and then we do, geography and a bit of history and that type of stuff, spelling.
And was there any corporal punishment?
There was, but it wasn't, let's put it mildly like this, it wasn't as severe as it was in the local town school. And it was, it was part of the culture at the time was spare the rod, spoil the child type mentality. But there weren't that many people, and I think often when you had people in charge of you who respected you, and you showed some respect to them, I think they were a lot more intuitive than we realized. That, not all pupils progress at the same rate, and you need, you can't blame somebody if they don't know everything or not as quick off the mark as others. And I think that these were quite good. And I think it was very rare.
Did you were the recipient of any of?
Oh, well, we'd all get slaps, and one of the jokes was, how many slaps did you get? That would be always thinking, how many slaps did you get today?
Yeah. And where did you go to secondary school then?
Well, I went to, actually, my brother had gone to Rockwell College, mainly again because of family connection with the junior teacher in school, Mrs. Casey, her son Sean Casey, who was a Holy Ghost father, and then became president actually of Black Rock later years. He was, from the town. So my brother went there, and I went there. I was 3 years younger, and I went there as well. And I was there for 4 years, and so that was my connection with Rockwell. So the connection with it was through Mrs. Casey, our junior teacher, and her son was Holy Ghost father. So that's why we went there.
Okay.
And I went there for 4 years before. Actually, in one of the reasons I went is that in my final year, the school in Charlestown, which is the convent school, there was no boys' school apart from the technical school, went co-educational. So I decided at that stage I was, and I think it was probably one of the better decisions I made in my life, because I decided that I was going to go there for my final year, and I was not going to do much sporting activities or anything else. I was going to try and study and try and get to university, which was really at that time becoming a name that I had and wanted to do. So
you were talking about sport there. You got into sport.
Yes, I think because we had, we're a family of 10, so there were 6 boys first, and then Mary, my sister, was born, and then there were 3 boys after that. So, but we had the Olympics at least once a week, at least once a month over the summer months. And once around the field was 400 metres, two around it was 800, and so on for the mile. So we had everything in the Olympics every summer. So we competed against ourselves, and we had football matches in the back street, the front street, out the fields, everywhere. So we were quite sporting, and we all liked and participated in sport.
And did this all imagination sport develop into real action?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, they, we weren't bad at sport. We all, most of us, some of them, my brothers didn't play much sport, but probably 2/3 did.
And when you were in Rockwell, did you play rugby in Rockwell?
I did.
You played rugby, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, that's where I got to know it. And one of the great things about it was that I got to know quite a lot of, people through that became very good friends with all my life. And a lot of people, like Willie Duggan, who played number 8 for Ireland, he was the class ahead of me. And Eddie Malloy from Limerick, who played with Gary Owen, got an Irish final trial and played a lot for Munster. We used to sit together a lot. So I mean, I knew all these guys very well. Sean McNamara, they played out half for Munster when they were starting out. So I knew the game, and I played it, from when I was about 13 until I was 17. So as I got bigger, I probably got better. And when I went to university, I actually took it up again after 1 year off for doing my leaving cert. But it was
just go back to the secondary school. What subjects did you do that in secondary school?
Well, you've done the.
So what years were you talking about roughly? What years?
You mean
in secondary school?
Well, these would be from 63 to 68.
60, okay, yeah.
So the traditional English, Irish, maths, science. Did French early on. Wasn't great at it. History, geography. Always found those subjects about the easiest thing. Never need to study for them. I think that they were the main subjects we did. I switched.
You weren't doing the classic. You weren't doing Latin or Greek.
I did, yes. Sorry,
they're available, were they?
Yes, yeah. I did Latin, and I kept it up too. Even like when I switched schools, there was no Latin teacher in formal Latin classes in the school when I came to do my leaving cert. But we had one teacher who had some Latin, kept us up, and I managed to get an honour in Latin as well. So that was good for getting a grant.
Yeah. You don't teach it anymore, do they, in secondary school?
I don't know, but I mean, I still find it, quite a useful. It's the construction of sentences, and that is something that you learn a lot from Latin, in that it's a different way of putting language together, and you can understand the genus of words, how they're formed.
And who were your buddies in secondary school now? We have little gangs, there'd be 4 or 5 of them.
What do you mean in secondary school in final year? Like, because I moved now school in.
Oh yeah, you lost the.
Oh, I lost the crowd in Rockwell, obviously. So I mean.
Yeah.
But the other thing was that the girls then became very important, because there were a lot more of those around, and there were only, I think, 4 boys in the leaving cert. So
and there many girls?
It was probably best part 25, 30.
25. Oh yeah. And what was that experience like? Just normal, was it?
Well, the hormones kick in.
That's what I'm getting at.
I was gradually getting into puberty. I know.
Anyway, did you have a relationship with them, guys? No.
Oh well, you had some of these. I mean, they were very
platonic, were they?
Well, they were very they were amorous from a distance.
Were you shy?
Shy but willing.
So you went to college?
Yeah,
university.
I mean, probably the main reason I went to university was that I managed to get a grant. Donald O'Malley had brought in 1967.
Okay.
4 hours to get a grant to university, and that was
big help.
I managed to get that.
Can you remember how much it was?
£300.
£300.
Yeah. So I mean, the teachers were asking me, like, well, why wouldn't I consider doing science, doing medicine? But I really had no solid science subjects. And I decided I'd do arts, and I was probably lucky in that I wasn't that attuned to studying when I went first. I heard about libraries, but I think I got by till Christmas without ever going to that library. And I thought I could remember everything I learned in the lectures, but of course things like English, history and geography were fine, but I actually did first arts, Latin as well. But I began to figure after about January or February that I wasn't really up to pace on this, and you had to knuckle down and do some work to try and get through your exams. So actually, I did pass my exams fine, but then dropped Latin, and I actually dropped English as well, and took up sociology and politics. So I ended up going on and did geography sub-sid. I did honours degree, and I got honours in sociology, politics and history. And then I got an opportunity to do a master's, so I did a master's then in sociology, and but that was nice because I was doing it on like topic. I was a junior researcher on a study we were doing for the what's it called? It was on really about why some people, older people, ended up living in the equivalent then of county homes, aged persons' homes, as opposed to those who were living in their communities, and what were the different factors they were doing. So it was based on that.
A matter of interest, what was the big difference? Was there a big difference?
Oh, having a family.
Okay.
You know, I mean the usual one, and especially daughters, and that's mine.
So you got your degrees then?
Well, I did, but actually what I did my thesis on, I had to do a thesis independently of the paid work, but what I did the thesis was I applied Goffman's, Irving Goffman wrote a book on asylums, which looked at the theoretical model of what happens when you go into institutions like prisons or monasteries and that. So I took his model and applied that to what happens to old people when they go into county homes or old persons' homes. And it's really dealing with the total institution where all your life events are taken care of. So there's a stripping process, and then there's a reorganization of self. So that was really what it was about. It was that theoretical model, but it was very good, and I managed to get a first-class honours in sociology for my master's. So,
but that would have been useful to management of hospitals or Department of Health or something.
Down the track, it was very useful. I mean, it was in a subliminal way. It became very useful because it was type of an understanding of how what happened when people came into hospitals. It gave you a very different perspective on it when you started doing medicine. Because one of the things that I found when I moved away from doing an arts type subject to doing medicine is that the science subjects were very precise and tended to have different measures and metrics in it. And it was sometimes a pity because I lost that interest in reading hugely around the subject. And whereas, you know, you had to do that to develop a theoretical model to do the masters, but in science, in medicine, my main trouble was I had to pass exams because I couldn't afford to fail.
Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, once you got through, I mean, once you got to a certain plateau, you know, it became easy enough to do it. But you had this abiding feeling that, you know, it was a tougher ask to get the exams in medicine, and you know.
And in a very short sentence or two, what did you find about it? Did they become institutionalized, the people in the...
Oh, well, they are. I mean, they're totally dependent on the system because, I mean, the system organizes itself to provide all your things. So it's a total institution.
Yeah. But that's gone now because they're virtually, the mental hospital, they're virtually gone, aren't they?
Oh, well, they'll never change because you'll always have prisons and you'll always have people like that, and all hospitals are still governed the same thing. You know, so it's the model will always be the same because that's what happens. I mean, an institution is there are established patterns of recurrent social relationships, but I mean, you could say, like, if you use the term, say, institution, it could mean anything, but when you put it down as a total institution, it means all your life events takes place within it.
Yeah.